Let's now talk about IT or about technology. Those of you who have stayed with us for the whole presentation, you have seen all the different areas that we have tried to cover. And in all the areas, we have tried to come up with recommendations of things that we could do, the best practices that we could imitate, um, and try to move along in the right direction. But clearly, it's not as simple as snapping your fingers and you'll have a factory running and producing goods tomorrow. A lot of investment has to get into it, a lot of planning has to get into it, skill development, acquiring the raw material, the equipment, everything has to happen to make a dent, to start moving in the right direction. Technology is one area where Pakistan could start making some substantial progress in much lesser time with much lesser amount of upfront work. So in this session, we'll talk about some of the opportunities that we have and what we could do to leverage them. So again, something that you've seen in all the other topics that we have covered, that we have obviously gone through an extensive amount of research, the background in terms of trying to understand what challenges we have, how we could solve them, looking at some of the best practices that other countries have implemented, and how we could perhaps learn from them, learn from some of the pitfalls that other countries have reported, and see how we could maybe come up with a cohesive plan that'll help us move forward. In technology, we got lucky. So we're going to share with you a report that is published every year, and this really gives us everything that we need to have. It's the Global Innovation Index. This is from 2022. It's a very comprehensive 266 page report. We're providing the whole link to this PDF over here. Um, what it does is it rates every country in these areas, the value that the institutions are providing, the how comprehensive they are, the level of education, instructions. They look at all the different whole bunch of parameters within the institutions category. They look at the human capital and research area. How is the country progressing in maximizing the value of humans who are working? So again, their training and the background that they have, the job training, they look at that as a factor as well, and how much of research is going into what the companies or what the countries are doing. They look at the infrastructure that's available to people sitting at home and doing things or working in the offices, universities, schools, everything. They look at all of those factors, try to figure out what the opportunities are in this area. Similarly, in the market sophistication, how well placed is the country? So there are a whole bunch of criteria within the segment as well, and same as the business sophistication. So I'll show you a couple of samples of this report. And again, as you can see, going down the list, knowledge and technology outputs. How is the country producing goods or services which are then being deployed elsewhere, whether deployed internally for the country or is going abroad? And the creative output, of course, in art, in literature, in all the other areas where a country could be flourishing. Many countries are flourishing. So in Pakistan, I think Pakistan has got a decent score in the creative area, but in many other areas there are opportunities. So again, we can look at this report and we can just sort of lament the fact that Pakistan is doing very bad, poorly as compared to the rest of the countries. So here's a glimpse of where Pakistan is. Again, it's very hard to read. Again, once again, as I mentioned earlier, the link to the PDF is provided. I encourage you to download it. Go to page 184, and there's where the whole profile of Pakistan is. Highlighted here are the categories that we just talked about, and these are all the different areas that they looked at inside of those categories. So hope you agree with us that this is a very comprehensive report, very comprehensive analysis. Now, again, if somebody wants to make a counter argument, they might say that maybe they didn't have all the information. Maybe it's possible that Pakistan is doing better than what they are reporting here, just because for lack of information or maybe the timing of when the information was available. And yes, I agree, it could potentially happen, it could materially happen, but don't expect for those types of small omissions to substantially change the result. If the report, for example, is saying that Pakistan is one 700th in the global ranking. And it turns out that we have not added some of the couple of factors, couple of reports that they are talking about. So even if you were to add them, Pakistan will not suddenly jump from a hundredth position to the top 10 or the top 15. The problems remain where they are and what they are. So what we have done is we have taken this entire all the different sections over here, and we have selected the areas where Pakistan must improve. So these are the areas where out of the 132 countries, Pakistan ranks in the bottom 30 percentile. These are the areas and what rank Pakistan has. Let's go down the list, and then obviously we'll pause when something requires some thought and some deliberation. The knowledge workers. So this is where the how much information they have coming in, how much on the job training opportunities they have available to them, and how we are utilizing them and their output. Pakistan is 103rd out of 132 countries. Full-time research positions, 80 out of 132. Now, can you imagine that a country like Pakistan, for us, for us to move forward, for us to really to make a difference in how the world is, shouldn't Pakistan be putting all the resources into research, into the first two categories, knowledge workers, improving their throughput, their capabilities, expanding, investing upon those, and creating research opportunities. And this research is obviously clearly it's not just in the university settings alone. It's almost always best if we do it in a public-private partnership. Again, huge opportunity. Pakistan ranks currently 80th in the global scale. Women with advanced degrees, 118th out of 132 countries. Let's pause on this for a moment. We have another section here that we're going to be focusing on opportunities for women and how Pakistan has literally left them behind, how they are not a part of the equation, how they are not on the table, how they are not making critical decisions, and how Pakistan is suffering because of their absence from where the opportunities are. And that's an area where we absolutely must invest a substantial amount of time, resources, and efforts to make this happen. To not just give them the high level of education at all levels, but also to bring them into the workforce and to really to utilize the benefit of their partnership. Patent applications, 95th in the world out of 132 countries. High-tech imports, 115th. Impact of knowledge on technology, 110th. Labor productivity, 112. So the people who are working, how productive they are at their jobs, 112th out of 132. So why are they not productive? Why are they not producing what they should be producing? What are the other countries doing who are ahead of us on this particular criteria? Do they have better tools? Do they have better knowledge? Do they have better information? Do they have a better environment, better infrastructure? Answer: all of the above. All of the above. So Pakistan really must invest in these all the different areas to really to have any chance of moving forward. Software expenditure, 99th. Let's now look at the second section, the second column. Um, Original industrial design. This is the area where they talks about the new concepts, the new design that's coming out of the country, and how they could potentially lead to either new products coming out or new patent applications. So how is Pakistan again as compared to the other countries? 111th in this category. Printing and other media, 85. GitHub submission. This is a pretty important criteria. So remember, the technology right now is an area where anybody could go in. You could watch free courses on Udemy or on YouTube and just acquire some basic skills, and you can roll up your sleeves and start developing, start programming. And GitHub is one of the largest code repository where you could submit your code, and not just for peer review, but you build your library over there as well. Pakistan is 107th in GitHub submissions. What does it tell you? It tells us that that we are just not focused in this area. We're just not focused on developing new technologies, new solutions, new innovation, and that's again an area where the reason we are where we are. We can just see this. Technology should have been leading from the front, but the unfortunate reality is that technology has not. Let's keep going. Investment and market evaluation, Pakistan ranks 88. Ecological sustainability, 100th. GDP as a unit of energy use, 111th. So this tells you how productive our utilization of the resources are, 111th in the world. Environmental performance, 104th. Venture capital recipients, 91st in the whole world. That means how many applications are being submitted for venture capital, and then how many of them actually can receive some funding. And actually, I'd be curious to find out if this, even if this 91, the rank, what's the criteria for this? Is it applications coming out of Pakistan, or is it applications from people who are maybe originating from Pakistan but maybe settled abroad and doing research in different countries and trying to raise money um, for their own entities. So a lot to think about, right? A lot of we could certainly focus on all the negatives. We could certainly focus on the area that Pakistan has clearly fallen behind. But let's pause on this for a moment and look at this as a set of opportunities. It's like we received a scorecard, and yes, the results are bad. The numbers are really bad. But what does it tell us? It tells us that if you focus on these areas, just pick them up one at a time, two or three or four at a time, and start coming up with a plan to start moving in the right direction, there are some opportunities. Okay, so again, I want to just turn this around into a positive venture for us, so we can start moving in the right direction. Let us now shift our focus and start coming up with some recommendations. But before we do that, let me pause again for a moment to make a case. I have a background in software development, in technology implementations. So many of the areas where Pakistan is deficient in, I personally understand those areas very well. And of course, I work with many others who could also advise in what could be done in those areas. One reason why Pakistan lacks in quality control, in innovation, in doing the right solutions, is that we got all the whole bunch of individual software houses, performers who are working in their own capacities, and from where they are, from based on what resources they have, what skill sets they have, they obviously are doing a good job. So the foreign countries, they continue to hire them and engage their services, whether they're working as freelancers individually or they're large or mid-sized software houses. But the problem is that they lack uh, the best practices, they lack the standard operating procedures, the control, the checks and balances that must be in place, right? So when someone comes on board and they have a skill in, let's say, Python development or in C sharp development, you don't just put them to work on the next day. You first, not just you judge them, but you give them the operating guidelines, how the code has to be submitted, how the kind of documentation, the kind of how do you create libraries, how do you leverage the existing libraries, how do you put together the whole object oriented based environment, right? So there are certain guidelines that have been established for a long period of time. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Solutions are out there. We know exactly what needs to be done. So this is really one area. So let's focus on the recommendation. But one area where Pakistan lacks is sort of the self-governance part of this. So let's come up with our recommendation, which is to build a governance body, to create a technology council that is entrusted with the following tasks. So this council would effectively be sort of a liaison between all the software houses, all the development shops which are working in different capacities, and between them and their consumers and their customers. So how the information is coming in, as you can see in the next few minutes, as we go through all the different bullet points in this area, you will see how this technology council could really enable not just a conversation, but also the solution that comes out of it. And they need to develop come up with obviously the development standards, which means standard for documentation, design, development, implementations, quality matrix. How do we test all of those things? How do we release the code? We earlier talked about the GitHub submission. They create the standards for all of that. So if you are not doing any of these, if you're not completing the checklist, then there's a problem. And we need some kind of a governance body to advise us, not just in terms of the police out there trying to penalize companies or people, but try to find opportunities where we are not doing something right, and we really must be always be filling out the checklist. And then once you've got developed the standards, to teach these standards to all software houses and other companies. So this, I envision for this to be an ongoing training opportunities where every new employee, every new graduate, for example, must go through a certain levels of courses. There will be a certification process as well, to make sure that when a company says that they're able we'll take an example. Let's say there's a foreign company, they want to do a migration of all of their on-prem databases, on-premise databases, and they want to go on a cloud. And they're speaking with a company that's saying, hey, look at us, we're able to help you with this process. How do they know how good the company is? How do they know how well defined their processes are? How not just quickly they're able to complete the requirements, but how thoroughly they're able to implement that? This is the area where the certification comes in. This is the area where the level of competence comes in. And hopefully, if you have a technology council that's out there, maybe to act as not just a middleman, but a certification and governance body, this will really make things a lot easier for everyone. Let's keep going. Define and teach the standards for communication. How does the information travel back and forth? Remember, communication is not just me writing an email to somebody. Communication is the level of email, the level of details required, the optimum level of details required, who I'm communicating with. If it's executives, maybe I'll use the feature and the benefits and the high levels of my implementation. But if I'm dealing with the development team, with the developers themselves, or the QA team, or the database people, then of course I need to speak their language, right? Especially if you're talking about some of the requirements, some of the whiteboarding session, the wireframing, whatever it might be. Similarly, they define and teach the standards for estimation, the standards for quality, the standards for code repository, the standards for service level agreements, what agreements we can have in place, what agreements we should have in place, and what we must always be abiding by. Review all contracts and agreements with internal clients as well as the external clients sitting abroad. So remember, look at this. All of these areas where we are talking about this group should come up with the standards. Standards already exist. They exist in different. Every company defines their own. But what are Pakistan standards? If someone is to, if a new company, or one of my clients, for example, if there's an opportunity for them to, if they're looking for an offshore development partner to take over some portion of their operation, and I propose Pakistan or a company out of Pakistan, what confidence would they have? Imagine if the company is certified in all the areas listed over here. Imagine the level of confidence, the level of comfort they'll feel in dealing with a company in Pakistan. So that's really where we are driving with this conversation. Let's keep going. Implement strict procedures. Of course, we talked about this earlier, that compliance and governance. And again, the point here is not to be punitive or to penalize companies and for the lack of performance. The idea here would be to develop a standard and then to adhere to that standard so everyone understands what needs to be done. Everyone understands that if you fall short of what you need to do, it's not just you who gets impacted, it's the reputation of the country that you're now potentially jeopardizing. Right, this is a really important point that we must understand, that our actions or our lack of actions could yield much more detrimental results, that which is beyond your next paycheck or your next contract agreement. this company, this group should also manage all issues and escalation. There must be a body that a foreign country or a foreign company should feel confident in, that if there's any time there's an issue that they're not able to resolve, they will not just have to wait, send an email and wait for someone to get back or someone to answer their phones. There's a body, there's a professional body that they could reach out to and air their grievances, figure out what they can do, maybe something that they had done inadvertently, which they should have not done. But regardless, whenever there are issues between two parties, between two agencies, when a third party, when an arbitration company comes in to help them resolve the issues, that's really what steps they must go through. Try to understand what the problem is, what the root cause is. But the idea always is to be looking forward to figure out that how do we come out of this mess right now? How do we fix things? How do we make things right for everyone? But then how do we move forward? How do you maintain the relationship and continue onto the next path? So this is where again this council could play a phenomenal role in making this happen. What about marketing? So imagine a company that is sort of acting, sitting on top of all the software houses, all the major development companies in Pakistan. This company now has got access to all resources, the entire national talent pool. With that, can they not do a massive marketing, a global outreach for a social media campaign, touting all of our services? Right? We can then they can also forge partnerships with large companies and integrators, and then they could also form partnership in research and new ventures. Again, imagine this is one of those scenarios where you have access to all the talent, you've got all kinds of tools in your repository, and it's available to you to use. How would you put it to work? How do you put it to practice? You need a process here that not just gives you the basic training, it certifies you that you are able to operate at this level. It continues to monitor you and your performance over a period of time to make sure that you're always abiding, adhering to those very high standards, the global standards, and not just meet, but you exceed those standards. And then once we build this confidence, your confidence and your customers' confidence in these areas, then we go crazy in terms of marketing your effort, your availability all over the globe, and then forming partnership, public-private partnership with large corporations, with large companies, with countries even, and coming up with the new ventures. And this company, this entity, could then potentially become the front end to actively seek opportunities for product development and for prototyping. And finally, the partnership with universities in skill development and patent applications. Clearly, if this company is at the forefront trying to forge partnerships with with the global entities, and this company is keeping an eye on where the world is moving, this entity will also know what kind of skills we need for tomorrow's jobs, or tomorrow's requirements that might be coming to us for implementation. Okay. All right. And of course, the last point here is that this company should also partner with external programs to provide back office services. And another slide that we have got in this slide deck, we talked about how does a country earn foreign exchange for foreign dollars. And this is again one of those areas that we identified was that you sell goods or you sell services. Selling services are mostly done by these back office services. So again, how can Pakistan become the standard? How can Pakistan, for example, become a standard place to go to if you're a healthcare provider and you want to do a claims processing, a back-end service? Again, that's not something where you want to keep expensive people on your payroll in the Western world. You want to rely upon some service providers in other countries at a lower cost to you, lower cost and higher productivity, of course, and so you reach out to them. So can Pakistan become a standard? Can Pakistan become a standard in radiology, in looking at the X-ray, the scans, and trying to come up with the right answers in within minutes or within whatever the SLAs are? There are many areas that we could, over a period of time, identify, develop skills in those areas, and once we have got the skills, once we are certified, then again, as I said earlier, market the hell out of those opportunities and see where we could go. So there are some obviously, whatever we're talking about here, that's all doable. But then, where do you start? How do you do it? So, I want to present a model to imitate. It's a huge success in India. Invest India is the name of the project. They began as recently as in 2015, just about 8 years ago, with a staff of three, and it is now ranked as the number one global entity in investment promotion agency by United Nations and World Bank. Details are provided. The link is provided over here. Check out this. I think it's a small 25 to 30-minute video. It tells you, it is presented by the CEO of the company of this entity. It talks about what the motivations were when they began this company, what they were trying to do, what they were trying to enable through this, and what they have been able to achieve. Substantial results. So again, as we have said throughout this presentation deck, we need to solve problems. We've got major problems that we're trying to identify here. We need to solve. We need to move on, and then, but we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel and do things the hard way or the long way. If others have done and they've achieved substantial results, we should follow them. We should see what they're doing. We should follow in their footsteps. Things are not hidden now, thanks to the availability of all types of content. We have got readily available at your fingertips, just a quick search away. We can leverage what information is out there, and how we could benefit from them.